Today is day 5 of STAAR Review, and we will be reviewing solving problems from bar graphs, circle graphs, and dot plots. A bar graph is a great way to compare categorical data, which just means we're looking at different categories. It can be represented both vertically or horizontally. And the important characteristics include the longer the bar, the greater the value, and the sum of all the bars represents the total data pieces. So let's look at how to solve this problem from a bar graph. The example says students were surveyed to determine their favorite types of animals. The bar graph shows the number of students who selected each type of animal. What percentage of the students surveyed selected bird as their favorite type of animal? So we've got a percent. Think about what we've been doing all week. We've been setting up proportions. So what we're going to do is use the bird to set up, or the bird number to set up a proportion. And we're trying to find a percent, so we know we're going to have x over 100. So now what we've got to do is figure out how many birds were chosen. Well, if you look at the bird bar, that goes down to 6. So 6 of the students surveyed chose bird. Now we need to figure out the total. To find the total, we're going to figure out where each of the bars go to and then add them all together. So fish goes to 2, lizard goes to 4, bird goes to 6, dog goes to 10, and cat goes to 8. To find the total, we're going to add all of those numbers together. And when we add all those together, we get 30. So that's going to be our total. Now you can solve this just like a proportion. You can cross multiply and divide right away, or you can simplify. If we simplify 6 and 30 by dividing both numbers by 6, we get 1/5. So I'm going to replace 6 over 30 with 1/5. And now I know to go from 5 to 100, I have to multiply by 20. So I'm going to do the same thing to 1 and multiply by 20, which gives me 20%. So that is how you can solve a problem from a bar graph using a proportion. Now let's look at circle graphs. A circle graph is an easy way to display part-to-whole and part-to-part relationships. Remember that each portion of the circle represents a percent out of 100, and the entire circle has to add up to 100%. So let's look at this question. It says a survey was conducted to determine the types of occupations of the 1,200 residents of a town. These types of occupations are shown in the circle graph. Based on the circle graph, how many more residents have an occupation in industry than in government? A key word here is how many more. You've got to remember that how many more means to subtract. So we're going to start out by subtracting the percentage of industry and government. Well, if we look at our circle graph, we know that industry has 25%, but we're not sure about government. So what we can do to figure out that missing percent is add everything we know and subtract it from 100. So if I do 25 plus 25, that gives me 50, plus 15 is 65, plus 30 is 95, and then if we subtract that from 100, we're left with 5%, which would have to be that little spot for government. So like I said, it asks us how many more chose industry than government. So we're going to subtract industry's 25 minus government's 5%, and that leaves us with 20%. Now that's not our answer because it doesn't ask us for the percent, it asks us for the amount. What we're going to do to solve that is make a percent proportion. Remember that percents go over 100, and we're going to set that equal to x over the total. The only way for you to know the total is if you read the question. And the question, it tells us that there are 1,200 residents. So that's our total. Now to go from 100 to 1,200, we multiply by 12. So we're going to do the same thing to 20. And if we do 20 times 12, that gives us our final answer of 240. All right, we've only got one more type of graph to look at, and that is going to be the dot plot. A dot plot is another categorical display of data using a number line and dots to represent each data point. The data that repeats itself most often is the mode. In a dot plot, the mode is the highest value. So it goes the highest on the dots. It has the most dots. The example says Miss Gonzalez gathered data on the number of vowels in the first and last names of each of her students. The data are shown in the dot plot. What percentage of the students have 5 or more vowels in their first and last name? Again, since we're looking for a percent, we're going to start out with x over 100 equals the part that we want over the total. Well, the part that we want is 5 or more. So that is all of these dots. So what we're going to do is count how many dots there are in that section. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So there are 21 dots on 5 or more. Out of the total, so let's finish counting the rest of the dots. I was at 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Now we can solve for x. Well, we can simplify 21 and 30 by dividing by 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7, and 30 divided by 3 is 10. I know that I can go from 10 to 100 by multiplying 10, so we can do the same thing to 7, because 7 times 10 is 70, and that's going to give us 70%. So you're still going to be using proportions even when you're solving problems using graphs.